Hey, welcome. We are in chapter one of our new textbook, Adobe Photoshop Revealed um, by Elizabeth Redding. That's Creative Cloud Revealed. And I'm going to run through these chapter one PowerPoints with you. The chapter one you'll find in the skills review, which is your assignment for chapter one. You're just really navigating around the workspace and figuring out where things are. You may not even be making any noticeable changes to your document, which is fine. Understand that I still want you to save out that skills review document and upload it to me. And you'll see that for the first couple of chapters that not necessarily a lot of changes are taking place, but hopefully the changes that are taking place are in terms of your overall working knowledge of the Photoshop workspace and how you navigate around that. So that's the intent. Um, in chapter one, you're really just learning how to activate Adobe Photoshop CC, how to open, how to save an image. You're going to take a look at the Photoshop window in general, close a file and exit Photoshop. And then what I think is really good with this particular textbook is we also talk about overall design principles, and you'll learn some about copyright rules which is very important when you're working with imagery on the internet, because copyright can be very easily ignored or not utilized in the appropriate manner with imagery so readily available on the internet. So it's an important area to spend time with. So first of all, when you activate Photoshop, you'll see a lot of the stuff is the same, and I mentioned this in the demo for the actual exercise, one of the exercises in the chapter 2. You'll see a lot of the same layout, the same things as you saw in Illustrator. Um, Image looks can be deceiving because some of the things that look the same, like for example this in Illustrator is a selection tool. In Photoshop it's a move tool. These are the selection tools. So again, pay attention to some of the things that look very similar may not be so much. It is an image editing program used to create and modify digital images. Digital images are a picture in an electronic form. So again, if I went to File and Open, I'll try to navigate out to my desktop and open, I'm not sure what this graphic is, but I'll open it up. No, I won't either because that's so tiny you can't see anything. We'll try that again. I want to zoom in and show you the difference between Illustrator-based images, which are points and paths, and Photoshop images, which are pixel-based. So this is obviously a picture in an electronic form, and you can modify it, you can select portions of it and copy and paste it, but in the final analysis, when you zoom in really close, what you're going to see are a variety of different pixels. Pixels that are separated by color value. The pixels are basically from a very light value to a very dark value. And so if I were to go in with a selection tool and selected one, I can select a similar in terms of tolerance or value to all of the pixels in that image relative to the one that I just selected. Now if I wanted to narrow that tolerance, I'm going to bump it down to say 5. Range, which when we're sampling color, which is what I'm doing with the magic wand, I'm selecting based on color. So I'm going to go up here to do a select and deselect, and I'm going to again select that same pixel, but you'll see how just based on the tolerance how that selection is much smaller based on that range. So again, Photoshop is a digital imaging program. You work with digital imagery, which is a picture in electronic form, and there are a lot of things that you can do with it, but just what makes this program so popular. All right, it can be used to create original work, it can be used to manipulate color images, retouch photographs, repair old or damaged photographs, and create images for web pages. Again, it's a very versatile software, and it's used for things that in some ways are similar, but in the strengths are much different than vector-based software like Illustrator. You can use Photoshop on either a Windows or a Mac. Differences once you get the software open are really very slight. You use Control and Alt keys in Windows, whereas on a Mac you use Command and Option. Interface looks a little different, but not really significantly different. You can create original artwork in Photoshop. In fact, our last project is going to be to create an original artwork in Photoshop. You can use your own images that are taken with a digital camera. I used to scan my images, particularly my own individual artwork. If I wanted to get it digitally so I could manipulate it, I would scan it. Or you can download some of the images from the web. But again, permission for any of these is required in most cases. As you know from previous classes, there is a section of work called that's in the public domain that you can work with, that either the copyright has expired or was given, whatever. But again, for most situations, just consider you need to get permission to use an image if it's not your own. These are the different kinds of file formats that Photoshop can open. You may not be able to see that very easily. I can blow it up just a little bit, I think, here. And these are the different file formats, the different file name extensions, again, file formats and file name extensions. I think it's interesting they have Google Earth file extensions that you can open on Photoshop. But here, again, are all of the extension Flash, JPEGs, which are typically Photoshop documents or can be opened in, or digital images that can be opened in Photoshop. PC Paintbrush, I don't normally work with that, but I know that there are students that do and certainly can open up that file format. Photoshop, EPS and PDF, bitmap images. So again, all kinds of images that you can open and manipulate in Photoshop. And you saw in this example that an image is made up of all of these little dots called pixels. You can add, delete, or modify individual pixels or groups of pixels. Just like I had shown you before, you can select them. See how tiny that little selection of pixels are. And then you can manipulate them, modify them, you can change color of them. So I've got that tiny little group of pixels selected. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. And then for example, I could go to File, Edit and Fill. I'm going to fill that with a foreground color and click OK. And I'm going to do a select and deselect. And you'll see how easy it is to change. Now, I'm not sure why I'd ever want to do that, but you definitely can change colors along with a number of different other ways that you can modify those individual pixels or groups of pixels. This is how you open up Photoshop in Windows. If you on Windows 8, and then I demoed this as well. This is how you start Photoshop on a Mac operating system. That's the one that I demoed. Creating a new file, and we did that as well. Go to File on the menu bar. We go to New, and so on and so forth. You enter a height and a width, and that's something that I've demoed in the software demo, so I won't spend a lot of time with that. You can use save as. Now I did not demonstrate that, so demo that. You can do a file save as, and you'll find that you can save with this drop-down menu in a number of different file formats. Photoshop is the native file format, and then there are a number of different other file formats available for you to save it as. You can save it as a copy. I would always recommend that you maintain an original of whatever you're working on in its original state, and then you can manipulate it and save copies of, so that you, if ever need be, and there have been plenty of times that I've had to go back to the original state to start over. I did not work with you on this in the demo, but you can set the preferences in Photoshop. You can customize how files are opened in Photoshop. Options include using Open Recent to locate and open files recently worked on, or changing the image preview to thumbnails. I mean, there are a ton of other preferences that you can manipulate in Photoshop. If I were to go to Photoshop, my preferences are here on a Mac. If you're on a PC, you would need to go under Edit to find your preferences options. Adobe Bridge is a file browser basically, and I did demo that, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but you can examine files on your computer. You can sort, rank, or flag files. You can find Bridge here in your drop-down menu, or if you have downloaded Adobe Creative Suite, there's also a separate software called Adobe Bridge here. Anyway, I think there is. These are all the softwares you get, by the way, if you download the if you buy the Creative Cloud or rent the Creative Cloud. I don't see it here, but I was thinking that there was a separate software, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this is where, if again you've downloaded and purchased or rented Adobe Creative Suite, that's where you'd find the software available to you. This is again Bridge, and I demoed this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's Mini Bridge. I did not demo that, but you can find Adobe Mini Bridge as go into Bridge to browse in Bridge. It'll take a minute to open that. Get this down so we can see it. All right, sorry to have kept you waiting. If I did at all, I tried to pause it quickly while I was looking for Adobe Mini Bridge because I thought it had been taken out in 2014. I couldn't find it in 2015, and I just read some message boards, which actually, if you work in InDesign, Mini Bridge is available, it looks like, but not in Photoshop. Interesting. All right, so we are opening a file, using the file menu to open a file. So we are going to click out of here, Adobe Bridge. We're going to go back here to Photoshop, and actually I've demoed this, so I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time here. The only thing that I think is very useful, I use it quite a bit, is when I'm doing a file and open, rather than having to navigate through all my file folders, if I go down here to this Open Recent, you can see all of I can see all of the most recent files that I've opened, and just in case that is one in that group, I can then come back to that. So, and I did demo opening a file in Bridge. That's the Bridge window. Talked a little bit about that. And then getting photos from your camera, which all of us like to do, and you can use Adobe Bridge to move photos from your camera to your computer. You can click File on the Bridge menu bar. So again, I'm here in Photoshop. If I go back into Bridge, and once you're in Bridge, if you go into File, then you can click Get Photos from Camera. And then that will navigate out to where your photos are, or to where your camera card is. Now you can change this too, so it automatically launches whenever a camera or card reader is connected. At this time I'm going to say no, although it is kind of nice because they do have Bridge, as you can see, has numerous ways to file it, catalog it, and so on and so forth. And then you would just go through this process to find your camera and your download data. Using the Save As command, and now we're not out of Bridge again, we kind of bounce back and forth here, but you want to go into Photoshop and you do a File, Save As. And as I mentioned, if you're saving a copy of a file because you've changed it or manipulated it and you want to save an image, you can always do this. You can save it in a different file format, save it as a different name, save it as a copy, so on and so forth. Now each image displays in an individual tabbed window by default. You'll see that these are tabbed windows, and I have Poppy, I have this document open, and then I have just a blank document open as well. You can change to floating windows temporarily by going to Window on the menu bar, pointing to Arrange, and then click Float All in Windows. And you'll see then the change that occurs as a result. Each one of these opens up a separate window. If you want to change the default permanently, go to the Preferences menu, but I'm going to go back here. I'm going to consolidate all the tabs. That's just, for me, working on a small workspace, that's the easiest and the most economically using of spaces. Photoshop window, the workspace includes these elements. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see them. Move this over. You'll see the work area, which is the image, the menu bar, which is here up at the very top, the Tools panel, which again, much like Illustrator, separate, should always be available to you. The status bar, which is, well, look at this, so I'm not confusing you. I think this is all. The status bar is here on your document. You'll see the panels are over here. This is where you dock the panels. The minimized mini bridge, I'm not even sure if we have that available to us because we don't have mini bridge. But you do have the status bar. And this is the options bar. Really what you use most often is the tool panel, the layers panel over here in your panels, color, and depending on what tool you've used, the options bar, as well as the menu, obviously. And you can customize that workspace by positioning elements to suit your working style. And then you can save it if you choose to by clicking the workplace switcher on the menu bar, click New Workspace, and then save that like Nancy's workspace or whatever. Using tools in Photoshop, much like Illustrator, to perform different actions. You point to a tool to view a screen tip that provides the name or the function of the tool. I don't know if I have my tool tips deactivated or what, but there, lasso tool, I guess, there we go, rectangle tool, clone stamp tool. And in addition to the tool, it also shows you the quick key access for that tool. So here, for example, is the eyedropper tool. If I click the eye, that automatically jumps to the eyedropper tool. And then again, in the options bar, we'll give you options for that tool as well. Using tool shortcut keys, you want to press and hold Shift. We're going to go back over here, move this over, press and hold Shift, and I'm going to get my toolbox out of the way. I'm going to get somewhere. And then this will cycle you through the various tools that are available underneath that. Panels verify settings and modify images. Each panel can contain multiple panels. They can be separated and moved around the workspace. Each panel contains an options button and a menu. So if you're in the panels, let's just take the layers panel for example. I'm going to click and drag that out here. This drop down arrow is an options button so that you can do different things with that panel, or with that panel. And then these are also option buttons down at the bottom of the layers panel that allow you to manipulate or change. There's a panel example, that's the swatches panel. Re-stack that in my layers. And you'll see that I just click that tab to make it active, and then these are the panel options again. This is on the swatches panel. If you click and hold on that, that will give you the options that are available. You can close the file, click File on the menu bar, click Close, click Yes if you're on Windows, or Save if you're on a Mac. And then to exit photo, you just go to File on the menu bar, click Exit if you're on a Windows, click Photoshop, and then click Quit if you're on a Mac. I normally just X out. Ask me if I want to save. I don't want to save what I did with that. And then if I want to close Photoshop altogether. Now, as it relates to design principles and copyright, understand the differences between print and web design. You'll want to go through these differences, make sure that you understand the difference, because there's a pretty significant difference between imagery that's created for the web and imagery that's created for print. And then these are commonly used image use terms. Copyright, again, as I mentioned earlier, is very important because downloaded images from the web so easy to use, and we don't know for sure if it's legal unless we've asked for permission. So again, some of the terms, the definitions, and an example. And that's it for Chapter 1, guys. I'll be back in another day and do some demos and talk about Chapter 2. Great to see you this week.